little folk, a little psychedelia, and plenty of rock classics. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 Billboard chart-topping rock songs of the 60s. For this list, we focused on rock songs that reached number 1 on the Billboard charts while making a definitive mark on pop culture. Number 10, Turn, 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 To Everything There Is a Season, The Byrds. With lyrics that were pretty much ripped out of the Bible and a folk rock sound that was insanely popular at the time, Turn, Turn, Turn is on record as being the number 1 Hot 100 hit with the oldest lyrics. Allegedly taking around 78 takes to record and featuring some of the decade's best vocal harmonies, the Byrds obviously put in the time and effort to make this a timeless classic. Originally written by Pete Seeger, this version undeniably holds up to this day, as demonstrated by its multiple modern pop culture appearances. Number 9, Oh Pretty Woman, Roy Orbison.
Pretty woman, walking down the street, pretty woman, the kind I'd like to meet.
With all due respect to the 1990 film that reintroduced this song to mainstream America, Oh Pretty Woman is not actually about a Hollywood hooker with a lonely heart.
Pretty woman, I couldn't help but see, pretty woman.
No, not even close. It was actually inspired by Roy Orbison's wife, and when the song was released in 1964, the singer's smooth delivery and heavy pouring took it straight to number 1.
Come with me, baby, be mine tonight.
24 years later, a star-studded Cinemax special featured a classic performance of the song, which would ultimately earn Roy Orbison a posthumous Grammy Award upon his death.
She's walking back to me.
Number 8, Light My Fire, The Doors.
If I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher.
Girl, we couldn't get much higher. This was the first line that Ed Sullivan producers asked The Doors to change for a 1967 live performance. And do you think they agreed? Nah.
Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set them right on.
It was this type of rebellion that initially led to the creation of Light My Fire, as the philosophical hippies combined acid rock with their background in Chicago blues. After all, there weren't many rock musicians playing a Fender Rhodes piano bass in the late 60s, and Puerto Rican musician Jose Feliciano was so impressed with Light My Fire that he covered the number 1 hit and took home a Grammy in 1969.
Try to set me right on fire.
The Doors expanded their minds with this Billboard smash, and their musical reach expanded throughout the world.
If I were to say to you, yeah, we couldn't get much higher. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Number 7, The Sound of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel.
Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping.
Long before Will Ferrell took a tranquilizer dart to the jugular in Old School, a couple of folk rockers took the old pen and pad for a most introspective creation.
When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light.
After The Sound of Silence initially bombed on the music charts and forced the duo to end their collaboration, it was Father Time that saved the day, along with producer Tom Wilson, who enlisted a few of Bob Dylan's musicians for a remix that took the revamped version to number 1.
And here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know.
A few years later, Mrs. Robinson would become the first rock song to win a Grammy for Record of the Year, but it was The Sound of Silence that paved the road to rock immortality.
And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls. On the wind that lifts her perfume through the air.
Number 6. Good Vibrations, The Beach Boys.
I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitation.
Before the counterculture movement spread throughout America in the latter half of the 60s, a group of California musicians were already imagining a new style of music and a new way of life in general.
I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitation.
Brian Wilson and his team of boys from the beach created a psychedelic rock classic using beautiful harmonies and an early use of the electro theremin.
Don't know where, but she sends me there.
The Beach Boys knew how to get around, and they came out swinging with that very message for their first Billboard #1 in 1964. Number 5. Suspicious Minds, Elvis Presley.
We're caught in a trap. I can't walk out because I love you too much, baby.
There once was a time when Elvis was undoubtedly the king of rock and roll, but after serving his country in the US Army, he came to realize that the times were definitely a-changin'.
And we can't build our dreams on suspicious minds.
But in 1968, Elvis re-emerged with his famous black leather comeback special, and by 1969, he released his 17th and final #1 Billboard hit with Suspicious Minds.
Caught in a trap. I can't walk out.
It was this song that reinvigorated Elvis's career almost a full decade after the release of his 1960 romantic ballad, Are You Lonesome Tonight?
Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight?
Number 4. I Want to Hold Your Hand, The Beatles.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something. I think you'll understand.
When Elvis Presley returned from Germany in March of 1960, 4 musicians were about to begin perfecting their craft in the German city of Hamburg shortly before kicking off what is now known as the British Invasion.
Oh please, say to me, let me be your man.
As the Beatles' first #1 Billboard hit, I Want to Hold Your Hand literally caused distraught American girls to faint and forced aspiring rock stars to step up their game.
And when I touch you, I feel happy inside.
With such a simple yet effective message, the song figuratively connected John, Paul, Ringo, and George with mainstream America, and they kept a firm grip for years to come.
I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
Number 3. House of the Rising Sun, The Animals.
There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun.
In the early 60s, a baby-faced Bob Dylan was performing a folk version of this song all around New York City, but it was The Animals that reached a larger demographic while touring with Chuck Berry.
And the only time he's satisfied is when he's on a drum.
House of the Rising Sun details a dark journey through New Orleans, and through the menacing voice of Eric Burdon, the Animals announced themselves as the next great British invasion band, aside from the Beatles, that is. All in all, it's a traditional song made popular by a most untraditional psychedelic band. Number 2, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, The Rolling Stones. As the Beatles were conducting a collective hand-holding session with America, the Rolling Stones took a more controversial approach by conveying their need for a little satisfaction. While older listeners didn't necessarily process the sexual nature of the lyrics, younger audiences immediately grasped the concept and helped make the Stones' hit one of the most popular songs ever recorded. From the suggestive innuendos to the killer guitar riff, Satisfaction was in tune with the times, and Jagger's vocal performance was the cherry on top. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
Hot town, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty. Bend down, isn't it a pity? Doesn't seem to be a shadow in the city. Dance to the music. Dance to the music. Love, give it up, good love, good love. All I need is love, good love, good loving, baby. Come together right now. Over beat.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to turn black.
Hey Jude,
Number 1. Hey Jude, The Beatles.
take a sad song and make it better.
Well, here it is. In a time of social unrest, the Beatles gave listeners a symbolic and inspirational 7-minute ballad that is quite possibly the best pop song of all time.
So let it out and let it in. Hey Jude, dig it.
Originally devised to help young Julian Lennon cope with the divorce of his parents, Paul McCartney slowly but surely molded Hey Jude into something bigger, and even John Lennon believed the song to be an inadvertent message from one bandmate to another. The two musicians wrote Help just a few years prior, but with Hey Jude, McCartney seemed to acknowledge the end of an era, and it wouldn't be long until he and John shook each other's hand and went their separate ways. So, do you agree with our selections? What is your favorite Billboard chart-topping rock song of the 60s? For more mind-blowing top 10s published daily, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.